If I can have everybody's attention, please. Ivy, if you could kill the lights. First off, extremely important take-home test. The take-home test is due the day we return from vacation. So write that on the top of it right now. Due the day we return from vacation. Next up, if you're a day late, minus 20. If you're 2 days late, minus 40. If you are 3 days late, don't bother handing it in. You'll just get a 0. Okay? No excuses. You are encouraged to work together. I strongly think it's a good idea if you get friends in the class and you get together and have some pizza and, God bless, some soda or whatever you like to drink, and that you work on these questions together. I would honestly work on them separately. And then when you get together, go over them and, like, let's say 3 of you guys work together or 4 of you work together. If one person has a different answer than the others, I would really work on that one. And then if you have the same answer, odds are you're right. So the one thing on there, and it says it, if you'll read it at the top, it says that I'm leaving you space to show work or explain. So if you hand me in a test that has just answers on it, minus 50. You must show work, you must explain. So maybe you want to circle that part of the directions right now so you don't forget that when you go to hand it in. Okay? So you either explain or show your work. Okay. Now, next up, we have our quiz. And here are the questions on the board. And there are some people who are still not using the greatest common factor to factor this. It is possible to do it with the AM method if you play things around a little bit. I just think it's a whole lot harder. Plus, in terms of having the proper mindset going into this, you really do want to look for that greatest common factor. So there is your work right in front of you. I don't know how many of you have been taking advantage of the website lately, but I have been posting some homework answers. I have been posting some quiz answers. And I also started, I think I told you, this new section called Education on Demand. Extra help on demand, sorry. Let me just show you what I have plans of posting up there later today. Now, where's my word? I got to put my glasses on to read this. There we go. So I did this yesterday. Yesterday I did it for completing the square and quadratic formula. And then here's factoring. And there are 5 key concepts you have to know about factoring. The first is greatest common factor. That was what was number 1 on the quiz. The second is the AM method. The third is the difference of 2 perfect squares. The fourth is factoring completely. And the fifth is plan B. So I am going to do the answers to all of those questions, I hope, 4th period today. And I hope to put them up on the website this afternoon. So if you're struggling with factoring, watch the video. That'll help you. It won't perfect it, but it'll definitely move you in the right direction. And then I will do a video in a couple of days before you head home to do the take-home test about solving quadratic equations, which is just one step more than this. And then you would have had quadratic equations by factoring. You would have had quadratic formula and completing the square, and then you would have all of your factoring, which is really the guts of what we've done so far in this chapter and what's so absolutely critical, not only to this year, but to your future years in math. If you're not excellent at them, if you find it difficult to get to extra help, watch these videos. Even in extra help, most of what we do is we just ask if you have any questions on your homework or whatever, quizzes, and we go over it. This is additional material that you can have. So I think it can help you very much. And then we get into the second quiz question. Okay? Length of the rectangle, 3 more than the width. The area is 70. You guys, by and large, did a great job with this. Length times width is area. That's what we have right here. Distribute, get it all on one side. Here's my factoring step. If you can't factor, you can't go any further than this. But if you can factor, you're there. Jaden, I do believe when you did yours, I think you forgot to do the W times the 3 over here to get the 3W. And that's why it seems so awkward, like you couldn't factor it. Okay? And just about everybody realized they need to cross out the negative because in this particular context, it represents a length which cannot be negative. And a couple of kids forgot to go back and get the dimensions of the rectangle, which are 7 and 12. Boy, you know, there just never seems to be enough time. But I learned something in tutoring this young lady from Bellport. She's a very smart girl. And she took the Regents last June without ever taking the course. And she got a 70. Then I tutored her during the summer, and she got a 78. Now you might say to yourself, she only went up 8 points. No, she got 30 more points in raw score. She only got 8 points on the test score. That's how much better you have to do to improve. Then she took it this time, and she got an 88 or 89, which is very difficult because the percent of kids who score 85 or higher is very low. So when she got a 78 the first time, or 79, whatever she got, we thought that her grade was going to be significantly higher. So I asked if I could go in and look at her test, and the school district Bellport said no, absolutely not. So then the father said, can he go in? And they said yes. So the father brought his phone with him. He was taking pictures of all of her mistakes. And she knew how to do the math on every single question on that test, except 2. Obviously, she got even better now because her grade went up. You know what she constantly messed up on the test? And this was very eye-opening to me because I never thought about this. But one of the ways in which they've made this test so much harder than the old tests is in the details. And if you looked at her part 2, 3, 4, she would do all the math right on all of the questions, and then she would constantly screw up how she would present her answer. So, and this is an extremely smart girl, extremely smart, top-notch material. So then I said to her, I said, you know, I got an idea. From now on, I want you to take the test once, because you get 3 hours for the Regents exam. So, and you can leave after 2, but you can stay as long as 3. I said, take the test, and when you're done with the test, I want you to go back to all of the questions, and I want you to circle key words that have to do with the directions in every question. What we do is something like what we did right here. You see how I circled the word dimensions? Might have also circled the word area. Remember how many of you yesterday used perimeter instead of area? So what I'm going to develop in you during the course of the year, because it worked so well with her, she didn't know a lot more math this time, but her grade went up 10 overall points, 10 overall points, because she didn't beat herself on the test. It wasn't a matter of smarts, it was beating herself. She just went through and she circled every key word like area, so she made sure she did length times width. Dimensions, that means both length and width. On the first test, she might have just put 7 and stopped. I think some of you guys did that yesterday. These are very understandable mistakes. They're the kind of mistakes kids make all the time. But by going back when you're done and always taking a moment to circle key words, and then when you look at your answer, say, does your answer match what the keywords are saying? It eliminated her stupid mistakes. And her grade got so much better. And she texted me right after the test, and she said, you know, God bless, she said, I feel so much better this time because I circled all of those key words, and I made sure that my work matched, like area, so she multiplied, and I made sure that my answers matched. Now, how often do you get part of the credit wrong because of little picky things like that? Yet, they're all over your Regents exam. So this is a skill I want to build into you during the course of the year, and I think it'll help you a lot. Okay? I'm going to post the photocopy of this to the website later today. All right? Last night's homework. There's a couple of questions I want to show you the answers to. So if you would get that out, please. And there's a couple of complicated completing the square questions. I don't want to go over those right now. I want to go over the more routine one. And by the way, your next quiz, so many of you got 100 on today's quiz, your next quiz will have a completing the square question on it. So we better make sure we know how to do this. I'm not sure, but I think the next quiz is one completing the square question and one quadratic formula question. Okay? So, here we have the completing the square question all done out for you. Any questions on that? Okay. And again, this sheet will be posted to the website also. Here's a solved with the quadratic formula question. Remember to always get everything on one side. That's the big difference with completing the square. With completing the square, you don't make it say equals 0. See how it says equals 5? And with the quadratic formula and all other quadratic equations, you make it say equals 0. Okay? So take a look at that, make sure you're on the same page with me. And then there's something I haven't spent as much time on as I should, and I want to go over that with you. Okay? Don't copy this. You can copy it at home off the website. You're wasting time copying that. All right, any questions here? You definitely need to be able to get this right. Go home and look it over. Don't waste class time now. All right, so now I want to talk about a description of what the roots will be like. Now, you guys see the quadratic formula up there? Right? Can everybody see that this part that I'm circling with my finger, the negative b over the 2a, can everybody see that that's just going to be a regular everyday fraction? Right? Okay. However, this b squared minus 4ac is a big deal. See, that's what's going to affect how the roots turn out looking. Like for instance, we've already covered the case where you get a negative under there. What do you have if you have the square root of a negative? Imaginary, right? In fact, try it on your calculator now. Type in square root negative 3. What does it tell you? Does it say, Houston, we have a problem? Yes, it does. A negative number under a radical means that the answer is imaginary. It's not in a real number system. It also means if I graph it, it won't cross the axis. Remember we did that one? And we graphed it and it never crossed the axis, so we said there are no roots. Okay? There are no real roots when you get a negative under the radical. We look at b here, and under the radical I come up with 0. So doesn't that mean I would get plus 0 and minus 0? Right? And isn't that the same thing? What's 7 plus 0? Everybody.
7.
What's 7 minus 0? 7. So when the answer is 0 under the radical, that means that the roots are going to be real numbers. They're not going to be imaginary because it's not negative. They're going to be rational because you only have a fraction there because it's 0 under the radical. Furthermore, the roots are going to be equal because plus 0 and minus 0, same thing. Just like 7 plus 0, 7 minus 0, same thing. And then over here, square root, I crank it all out, I come up with the square root of 112. Does anybody know what that is? No. So the square root of a number that you can't, it's not a perfect root, you can't simplify it, is irrational. So, every day on homework, you get 3 questions like this. And all you need to do is work on that, they call this the discriminant, b squared minus 4ac, and just figure out what the discriminant equals. You don't need to do the rest of the formula because we know the rest of the formula is just going to be a regular fraction. Figure out the radical. If it's 0, they're real, rational, and equal. If it's a number you can't take the square root of, you're irrational. And that means unequal too, because one would be plus in one number, the other would be minus. And then if it's a negative, you get imaginary. Okay? All right. And I think that's it. Yep, that's it from the homework from last night. Okay, now we go on to today's new sheet, which I believe is number 12, right? Okay. I do this all the time. I should have had this open already, but 12. Solve the following equations. You will have several difficult quadratic equations on your Regents exam. You can write it in a book. If you don't learn how to do it, going to hurt big time. If you do know how to do it, you're in. Okay. Now, x squared plus 6x minus 40 is equal to 0. When you try the AM approach, are there any two numbers that multiply out to negative 40 and somehow add up to positive 6? What is it? Did you say negative 10? Oh, no, positive 10, negative 4. Yeah. So as soon as you realize that you can factor this, that's exactly what you should do. Notice, the first step was to ask, can it be factored? It can, so actually factor it. Yes, the quadratic equation works. Yes, completing the square works. It's a whole lot more time to do that. Maybe it's the guy on the left. Maybe it's the guy on the right. If you do not know why that factoring works, you better watch that extra help video that, as long as Dr. P gives me permission to miss hall duty, I will put up on the internet tonight. Do I cross out the negative 10? Why not, Francesca? Because what? Yeah, context. It's not a length, it's not time. If it was time, I would cross it out, because I can't have negative time. Though I think we all wish we could. Okay, next. Get it all on one side again. Minus x squared plus x plus 32. Minus x squared plus x plus 32. So I get 1x squared plus 12x plus 32 equals 0. And lo and behold, that can be factored. X plus 8 times x plus 4 is 0. Maybe it's the guy on the left. Mr. Reyes, learn to show your work. Minus 8. X equals negative 8. Minus 4. X equals negative 4. And there are my two answers. Okay? In all honesty, that should be routine. If that is not routine for you, you need to watch the videos on the extra help on demand until it is routine for you. And then all your stress will go away, which will do really well. Questions? Preguntas? Okay. Let's go forward and do some more stuff with symmetries of parabolas. Consider the equation y equals x squared plus 6x minus 40. We just did that. And we came out with negative 10 and 4. Given this quadratic equation, can you find the points where it crosses the x-axis? Well, didn't we just do it and we came out with the roots of negative 10 and positive 4? Do you remember that just a minute ago? Okay. So since the roots came out to be negative 10 and positive 4, then that means, because this is very careful here, can you find the points where it crosses? When I see points, I'm thinking coordinates, because that's how we usually write a point. So I would say negative 10, 0, and 4, 0. Okay. Then it says, how can we write a corresponding quadratic equation if we're given the roots? And here's where, the other day we talked about reversing the roots. Remember that? Okay? So x equals negative 10, x equals 4. Now let's just reverse our process. Add the 10 to both sides and get this side to say x plus 10 equals 0, minus the 4 here, and I get x minus 4 equals 0. So that means these two guys are my roots. So I just have to do x plus 10 times x minus 4 equals 0, and that would give me x squared minus 4x plus 10x minus 40 equals 0, which is x squared plus 6x minus 40 equals 0. Okay? So all I did was go backwards. Usually they give me the equation, I go forwards and I get the root. But it is possible that if I give you the root, I can go backwards and I can get the equation. Any question? Okay, last lesson we learned about the symmetrical nature of the graph of a quadratic function. How can we use that information to find the vertex of this graph? Well, it's a little bit tricky here because I'm kind of running out of room, but we said negative 10, there it is, and positive 4. What number's in the middle between negative 10 and positive 4? Negative 3. 1, 2, 3, right here. So that's my axis of symmetry. Right? Because isn't it true that with a parabola, any 2 points are always going to be corresponding points, will be the same distance away from the axis of symmetry? So that would be x equals -3, and then I can plug it into the formula, x squared plus 6x minus 40, plug in the -3, and I get 9 minus 18 minus 40, which is -49. So it would be -3, comma, -49. Because we know that the axis of symmetry has to have the vertex on it. I don't know where it is, but if I plug in the number, -3 squared plus 6 times -3 minus 40, and then I just do the calculations, it'll tell me what the y value is. Okay? Again, not overly complicated. Now, we can use that idea to help us. Graph the following functions and identify the key features of the graph. So, first off, when you look at these just in general, I notice a huge difference between these two graphs. What's a huge difference? Come on now. Super huge difference. Yeah. One's already done. Oh, okay, you could say one is in standard form, one is in factored form, but in some ways that makes the factored one maybe even possibly a little bit easier to graph. No, one's positive, one's negative x squared. What difference does that make? Yeah, exactly. It means that you're going to have minimums and maximums on the graph. So this guy is going to be a frowning parabola. This guy is going to be a what? Smiley parabola. How do you figure that one's negative? Well, that would do it. Okay. Now, what I mean by the factored form in some ways being easier, this would give me, can we all see that the root here would be -2? Right? Do we see how it says x plus 2 equals 0? Right? So this would be -2, and what would this root be? Positive 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now the middle between -2 and positive 5 is 1.5. So here is, no, here's my axis of symmetry, 3.5 units away in both directions. And if I want to find out my y value, it's going to be negative. Now, what's 1.5, because this is, x is 1.5. What's 1.5 plus 2? 3.5, right? And what is 1.5 minus 5? Negative 3.5. Did somebody on your calculator do 3.5 times 3.5? I keep forgetting what this one is. It's like 11 point something. I don't care about it. It's going to be positive in the end, so I wasn't even paying attention to the sign. 12.25. So let's see. 1, 2. Oh, it's positive. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.25. And here. Now, watch something pretty cool. Go to your calculator. Type in where it says y equals, type in this expression. In other words, it doesn't have to be the other way. It can be in this factored form. And it'll still tell you how to graph it. Go ahead. God bless. Bless you. Just make sure you use those parentheses, otherwise it's going to be a problem. We have the graph done. You see how you get the same graph? The one bad thing is go to table, and do you see how there's 2 points in a row and then there's not that one turning point listed? Right? Go in the table until you get x equals 1 and x equals 2. And do you see how you get the same values for y? Right? So it's not listed in there. So you do have to be a little careful of that. Whenever you see that, that means that the turning point is in the middle of those two. All right. Next one. Put this in the calculator. X squared minus 5x minus 24. think you got that same problem again with the turning point, right? This is going to be x equals 2.5 as your axis of symmetry. And if I plug that in, I get 6.25 minus, what does it come out to, like negative 30.5 or something? Negative 30 exactly? Negative 30.5? Oh, it's got the 2, yeah. Okay, so it's going to be down here, and here is my graph. Oops, sorry, I missed. There is my graph form. So the big thing today is for doing quick sketches of graphs, you can find the roots. Realize that the roots have to be the same distance on either side of the axis of symmetry. And then find the axis of symmetry and plug it in. By the way, something we talked about the other day, I said you just need to memorize this. You don't see it often. Once in a while, this is the equation for the axis of symmetry. X equals, b is negative 5, so I'm going to become positive 5. Over 2 times 1 is 2. X equals 2.5. So I can get that done as well. Okay? All right, listen. We have until Friday to get as much of this stuff perfectly understood as possible. Work together on your take-home test. Don't forget to get it done.